Wedding cancelled. My fiancé publicly shamed me. His mom exposed his shocking secret. After going out for 5 years, my fiancé told me he wasn't sure about marrying me. Then, he cracked a joke in front of his buddies, saying, "If you were prettier, I'd marry you." This very morning, his mom called me, crying her eyes out. Dominic and I had been together for just over 5 years, with 8 months of that being engaged. We first met through some friends at a housewarming party. We just clicked, bonding over how much we hated IPAs and how much we loved 90s cartoons. Our relationship moved along pretty smoothly. We dated for a year, then moved in together after 2. We adopted our cat, Beans, when we hit 3 years, and last summer, he popped the question. The proposal wasn't anything over the top, just a Saturday morning hike to our favorite lookout point, where he nervously fumbled the ring box out of his pocket. I said yes right away. We set the date for this October, and had been slowly putting all the plans in motion, or really, mostly me planning while he just nodded along. About 3 months ago, Dominic started making strange comments when we talked about the wedding. Nothing outright negative, just a lot of hesitation. When I showed him places we could get married, he'd say stuff like, "That's a whole lot of money for just one day," or, "Do we really need to invite every single one of those people?" I just brushed it off, figured it was normal guy stuff, or him worrying about the cash. Then came the slow replies to my texts about wedding plans. I'd text him choices for food, and he'd get back to me hours later with just, "Looks fine," or, "Whatever you want." When I asked if everything was alright, he'd say he was just swamped at work. His construction company had taken on some big jobs, so it made sense. Last month, he started hanging out more with his buddy from work, Paul. They'd grab beers after their shifts or watch games at Paul's place. Again, nothing out of the ordinary, just more often than before. When he'd come home, he seemed distant, checking his phone more and being less loving. I tried talking to my best friend, Lena, about it. She figured it was just wedding jitters and told us to have a date night to get back on track. So last Friday, I booked a table at this new Italian spot downtown, put on a nice dress. Nothing too fancy, just something I hadn't worn in a while, and even bought Dominic's favorite beer to have chilling in the fridge. The date night was a total train wreck. He seemed miles away through dinner, barely talking to me. When I brought up nailing down our honeymoon plans, he dropped a bombshell. He wasn't sure if he was ready for all this. Not just the honeymoon, but the wedding, marriage, the whole 9 yards. I was floored. 5 years together, 8 months engaged. And now he was unsure. When I pushed him for more, he brought up talks with Paul about how marriage changes everything, and even mentioned Paul's brother's messy divorce. The argument quickly blew up, with me trying not to make a scene in the restaurant while feeling like my world was crumbling. We hardly touched our main courses. The drive home was silent, thick with unspoken tension. At our apartment, he avoided talking more, saying he needed time to think, before crashing on the couch. The next morning was painfully awkward. We moved around each other like strangers staying in the same rental. He said he was meeting Paul and some work buddies for lunch to catch the game at the Rusty Nail, a sports bar downtown. I was too emotionally drained to even argue. A few hours later, Lena called and talked me into getting out of the apartment. We went for coffee, and I just spilled everything. Lena listened patiently, suggesting that maybe Dominic was just going through normal cold feet before the wedding. After coffee, we just wandered around Target with no real goal, which is usually how I blow off steam. I bought some throw pillows I definitely didn't need and new shampoo, because retail therapy counts, right? By early evening, I felt a little calmer and decided to head home. I was pulling into our apartment complex when I got a text from Kyler, one of Dominic's coworkers I'd met at the company Christmas party. The message asked if I was okay, saying things got weird at the Rusty Nail. I called Kyler instead of texting back. He sounded uneasy, not wanting to share details at first. After I pressed him a bit, he finally told me what happened. The guys had been giving Dominic a hard time about wedding planning, and when Paul asked if he was ready to be with just one woman forever, Dominic said he had doubts about the wedding time. When Paul asked what the holdup was, Dominic, who Kyler said was pretty lit, blurted out something like, "If you were prettier, I'd be more pumped about marrying you." Then he just laughed it off like it was a joke. Kyler told me he and some other guys called Dominic out for the comment, but Dominic just got defensive and said they couldn't take a joke. I sat in my car crying for 20 minutes after that phone call. The man I had loved for 5 years, who I thought loved me back, had publicly joked about my looks being the reason he was unsure about marrying me. When I finally went inside, Dominic was completely passed out on the couch, still wearing his clothes from earlier. The apartment reeked of stale beer. I took Beans, our cat, into the bedroom with me and locked the door. Sunday morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and bacon. Dominic's going to I'm sorry breakfast. He looked a bit rough, like he'd had too much to drink, and pretty ashamed, clearly hoping food would make everything better. When I called him out on what Kyler spilled, his face just dropped. He instantly tried to make it sound like nothing, saying he was wasted and just being a dumbass. He said the guys were giving him grief about being tied down, and he just blurted out something stupid to get them off his back. Him trying to brush it off as boys will be boys just lit my fuse even more. We duked it out about him making me look like a fool in front of his buddies, and he swore up and down he didn't mean to. He tried to spin it, saying he was stressed about wedding cash and feeling the heat, but I just couldn't shake the image of him using my looks for a nasty laugh. I just couldn't stand being in the apartment with him. I grabbed my bag and booked it to Elliot's place. My brother has always been my go-to person when things got rough. When I spilled the beans to him, he was ready to punch a hole through Dominic. I managed to chill him out, told him I just needed some breathing room and a place to crash while I figured stuff out. All Sunday long, Dominic kept blowing up my phone with sorry messages and begging me to come home and talk. I only texted him back once, saying I needed some space. I faked being sick for work on Monday. Couldn't stand the thought of pretending everything was hunky-dory, answering phones at the dental office. Around 9 in the morning on Monday, Valerie, Dominic's mom, called me. We always clicked. She'd been way more on our side than my own mom, who's down in Florida with husband number 3. She sounded pretty shaken up, said Dominic had called her last night and there was something big I needed to hear. She asked if we could grab a coffee or something to talk. And that's where I'm sitting right now, in my car outside the coffee shop, waiting to meet Valerie in 15 minutes, just racking my brain about what else could possibly be going on, and if my 5-year relationship is totally toast. Never in a million years did I think I'd be writing about this. I keep staring at my engagement ring, thinking, should I have seen this coming? Was I just clueless? Or did things really flip this fast? Should I even listen to Valerie? What in the world could she say to make any of this feel right? First update. First off, a huge thank you to all of you for the massive support on my first post. I never expected thousands of comments. I tried to read as much as I could while I was crying my eyes out and stress eating all the emergency Oreos from my brother's pantry. For everyone asking, yeah, I met up with Valerie, Dominic's mom, and I'll spill the tea on that at the end of this update. A whole lot has gone down in the past 2 days, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all. After I posted on Monday, I faked being sick again. My boss was cool about it. I mean, I'd only taken 2 sick days all year, and he said I sounded like death on the phone. I spent most of the morning holed up in Elliot's spare room, which is basically a storage closet, just scrolling through your comments and trying to get my head straight. Around noon, Lena swung by on her lunch break with sandwiches from that deli by the hospital where she works. I hadn't really eaten since Sunday, so even though my stomach wasn't growling, I made myself eat a few bites. Lena gently reminded me I couldn't dodge Dominic forever. We lived under the same roof, had shared money, and eventually, we'd have to talk it out. She was right. I couldn't just shack up at my brother's place forever, especially since Elliot's girlfriend was coming over for dinner that night. The last thing I wanted was to be the sad third wheel for their Taco Tuesday. After Lena split, I showered, snagged one of Elliot's hoodies. Don't judge. It was cozy and drove back to my place. The whole drive, I kept going over what I wanted to say in my head. No yelling. No crying. I was gonna stay cool, grown up, and get some answers. When I pulled into our parking spot, I saw Dominic's truck. He should have been at work. My stomach tied itself in knots as I walked up the stairs to our second-floor place. I unlocked the door and found him on the couch in sweats, looking like he hadn't slept a wink, buried under all those wedding planning binders I'd put together over the past 8 months. Beans were curled up right next to him. That little traitor. He looked surprised and kinda relieved to see me. When I asked why he wasn't at work, he said he'd taken some personal time. He'd apparently been going through all the wedding stuff, trying to figure out where he went so wrong. I just stood by the door, not ready to sit anywhere near him, and told him that looking at wedding plans wasn't gonna magically fix what he'd blurted out. What followed was a long, tough talk. He apologized again for the bar comment, said it was totally uncalled for and that he didn't even mean it. When I asked why he'd say something he didn't believe, he said he was trying to look tough in front of his friends. That answer just made me even madder. I reminded him about his comments at dinner, before the bar mess, how he'd been unsure about our wedding even when he was sober. He spilled that he was stressed about a bunch of stuff. A work project behind schedule. Paul's endless horror stories about marriage. And freaking out over our wedding budget. But instead of talking to me about all that, he just kept it all inside, until it blew up in the worst way imaginable. As we kept talking, he dropped a new bomb. He was scared he'd turn into his dad. Dominic hardly ever talked about his dad, who split when he was 12, after cheating with a coworker and moving to Arizona to start a new family. Even though Dominic always swore it didn't bother him much, he now admitted he worried he might have some family trait to cheat or bail on his family. I told him he wasn't his dad, and your genes don't decide how your relationships go. His answer spoke volumes. He wondered if he could actually promise forever, when forever looked so impossible based on what he'd seen growing up. When I asked if he'd talked about these fears with anyone else, he paused, then spilled that he'd been chatting with Kyler sometimes. Turns out, they'd gotten tight since Kyler started at the company, and Kyler had been through his own relationship drama. That's when it clicked why Kyler had called me about the bar mess. He already knew Dominic was having cold feet. Our talk took another rough turn when I flat out asked what Dominic had really been feeling. His answer was a hard pill to swallow. Scared. Totally swamped. And unsure about marriage. Even though he loved me. He said he kept thinking about how his parents seemed fine until they just weren't. And he was terrified of doing the same thing to us. I asked why he didn't tell me all this way sooner. He swore he was scared I'd think he didn't love me enough. The kicker was, by hiding his fears, he'd made exactly the mess he was trying to dodge. When I pressed him on whether that joke about my looks came from him not really finding me attractive, he swore he'd always thought I was hot. He even brought up our first meeting at that housewarming party, mentioning my green sweater and how awful he was at beer pong. He said the comment came from him feeling insecure and a dumb try to seem in charge in front of his friends, instead of looking trapped. As we kept talking, I hit him with the big question. Was he freaking out about marriage itself? Or about marrying me? The way he paused before answering spoke volumes. He finally fessed up that while he was mostly scared of marriage and settling down, a part of him wasn't sure if we were a good fit for the long haul. That stung worse than his crack about my looks. 5 years deep. And he was still scratching his head about us. When I pushed for details, he brought up how we'd both shifted since our early 20s. Me. Getting more into planning instead of just going with the flow. And him. Dropping his dreams of starting his own gig. I pointed out that people grow and change. That's just life in a relationship. But he wondered if we'd grown with each other or just grown apart. By this point, I was just completely wiped out. Emotionally. I told him I needed to get away. Needed space to sort through everything. Him embarrassing me in public. All his secret worries. And now he is not even being sure about us. He begged me to stick around and work it out together. Even offered to go to therapy or couples counseling. But I stood my ground. I needed my space. As I started to pack more clothes, he mentioned my phone had been buzzing like crazy. I checked and saw 3 missed calls from Valerie. With everything going on, I'd totally forgotten about our coffee date. When I told Dominic about it, his face went from confused to worried. Real fast. He asked what his mom wanted to talk about. And I told him she'd called me, crying, the morning before, saying she had something important to discuss after he called her Sunday night. His reaction? It said it all. He went white as a ghost and couldn't even look me in the eye. When I asked what he told her, he mumbled something about their argument and his doubts. But he was dodging the question so hard. It made me suspicious. When I pushed him more, he just said it wasn't his place to explain, and that I should hear it straight from his mom. I stepped away to call Valerie back. She picked up right away, worried that I hadn't shown up for our meeting. I explained I was back at the apartment, talking things over with Dominic. She said she had something big to tell me and suggested we meet up right then and there. Her voice got weird when I mentioned being with Dominic, which just made me even more suspicious that there was a huge piece of the puzzle I was missing. After we planned to meet in 30 minutes, I hit Dominic with it again, asking what his mom knew that I didn't. He finally looked up. His face a mix of guilt and just giving up. He said there was something he should have told me himself, and that I should definitely talk to his mom. He even offered to clear out before I got back if that's what I wanted. I quickly threw enough clothes for a week into a bag, plus my toothbrush and my laptop. At the door, Dominic told me he loved me. But I just said that sometimes love ain't enough. On my way to meet Valerie, Karina, Dominic's sister, gave me a call. She was obviously worried, asking what was going on between me and Dominic. She mentioned hearing from Paul about the bar blow-up and that Dominic wasn't answering her texts. Plus our mom seemed all kinds of upset. When I told her I was on my way to meet Valerie, Karina looked surprised and asked if it was about Maria. That name hit me like a ton of bricks. What about Maria? I shot back. Karina's shocked face and how fast she backpedaled told me she'd just spilled the beans on something big by accident. She said sorry and really pushed me to just listen to Valerie, refusing to say anything more, no matter how much I tried to get it out of her. As I pulled into the coffee shop parking lot, I saw Valerie already sitting at a table by the window. Her eyes were red and puffy. Whatever she was about to drop on me, I had a feeling it was going to change absolutely everything. My phone buzzed with a text as I walked toward her table. It was from Dominic. Whatever my mom tells you, please remember that I do love you. I just got scared and made terrible mistakes. I'll understand if you can't forgive me. I shoved my phone back in my purse, took a big, shaky breath, and sat down across from Valerie. Second update. Thanks to everyone for all the kind words on my last few posts. Reading what you all wrote has been both a comfort and a lot to take in. I haven't had a chance to write back to many, but please know I've seen them and really appreciate the advice. I'm typing this from a new spot, Lena's apartment. After my chat with Valerie yesterday, I just couldn't bring myself to go back to Elliot's place or our apartment. Lena's got a pull-out couch that's a bit cozier than that futon in Elliot's storage room. Plus, her cat, Pepper, doesn't bat an eye if I'm crying into my cereal at 2 in the morning. So, that talk with Valerie. Man, where do I even begin? The coffee shop was hopping for a Tuesday afternoon. Some community college nearby had just let out, and kids with their laptops were hogging most of the tables. Valerie had managed to grab a corner booth, one of those with tall backs that make you feel like you've got some privacy, even if it's just pretend. She looked different than the last time I saw her at our usual family dinner 3 weeks back. Her hair, usually perfect, was a little messy, and she didn't have a stitch of makeup on. In the 5 years I've known her, I've never seen Valerie without at least mascara and lipstick. She's not full of herself, it's just her thing, like how some folks can't kick off their day without a cup of joe. When I got there, she stood up to give me a hug. She smelled like those lavender dryer sheets she always uses. I just ordered a plain black coffee, even though what I really wanted was one of those sweet caramel drinks with a mountain of whipped cream. Somehow, it just felt wrong to order something so fancy for such a heavy talk. After some uncomfortable small talk, Valerie cut right to the chase. Dominic had called her Sunday night, totally falling apart. She said she knew his fears about settling down and becoming like his dad were real. But there was something else. Something way bigger. Behind how he'd been acting. Maria. I nearly choked on my coffee right then and there. Maria. The new project coordinator at Dominic's company. The woman he'd mentioned just a couple of times. Real casual like. As Valerie explained, tearing a napkin into tiny bits, Dominic had started having feelings for Maria over the last few months. Nothing physical had happened, or so Dominic told his mom, but he'd gotten emotionally close to her, and it made him question everything about us. I just sat there, trying to make sense of it all. Felt like the whole coffee shop was tipping over while Valerie kept talking. I was putting the pieces together in my head, building a timeline. Maria had started at Dominic's company around the new year. I'd met her for a quick minute at the company Christmas party back in March. By then, Dominic was already acting funny, more distant, glued to his phone, hanging out more with his work buddies. What I'd chalked up to stress from his big work project now looked like a whole different ballgame. When I asked Valerie why she was telling me all this instead of sticking up for her boy, her eyes filled right up. The story of her own marriage falling apart became clear as she spilled more details. Before Dominic's dad took off for Arizona with his coworker, there had been months of him being distant, making hurtful remarks, and starting fake fights, all to push her away instead of just coming clean. She didn't want to see the same thing happen again. With me left in the dark while Dominic played chicken. That crack at the bar suddenly made perfect sense. Not just him being a drunk idiot, but him trying to wreck our relationship so he wouldn't have to make the tough call himself. We talked for more than an hour. Valerie talked more about her own heartache, how she tried to save her marriage even after finding out about the affair, how she blamed herself for not being good enough. Before we went our separate ways in the parking lot, she said something that's been playing over and over in my head. The toughest thing I ever learned was you can't make someone pick you. They either will, or they won't. And anything in between is just putting off what's gonna happen anyway. I sat in my car for a good long while after, just staring at my phone. Dominic had sent 3 new messages. All saying I'm sorry and I love you. But not a peep about Maria. Still keeping the real story to himself. Instead of writing back, I called Lena and asked if I could bunk at her place. She didn't miss a beat or ask questions. She just said she was already setting up the pull-out couch and offered to grab us dinner on her way home. That's the kind of friend you want when things go south. I finally texted Dominic back. I know about Maria. Don't call me or text me again until you're ready to tell me the whole truth. I'll be getting more of my stuff tomorrow while you're at work. Then I blocked his number. Not for good. Just for the night. I needed room to think without him trying to explain or make excuses. On the way to Lena's, Karina gave me a ring. Our chat confirmed what Valerie had told me. And it piled on even more. She'd overheard Dominic and Paul talking about the situation last Thursday. She'd gotten in her brother's face and made him promise to be straight with me after the weekend. Clearly, he didn't hold up his end of the bargain. What really got me was Karina sticking by me, no matter what. Even though she's Dominic's sister, she made it perfectly clear she was in my corner on this whole mess. The relief that washed over me was huge. I'd been scared stiff about losing not just Dominic, but his whole family, who'd become like my own over the years. Lena's apartment was exactly what I needed that night. A calm place where I could just breathe without having to explain a thing. We ate on her living room floor. Her coffee table was buried under papers from her online class, while watching some baking show that neither of us was really paying attention to. The plain, normal feel of it was like a lifeline in the middle of my emotional meltdown. After Lena hit the hay, I stayed up, just flipping through pictures on my phone. 5 years of memories with Dominic, trips, holidays, random selfies on regular days. Our engagement photos showed us smiling so big it looked like we'd won the lottery. I was making plans in my head for the next day, going to the apartment while Dominic was at work. Packing more of my stuff. Maybe talking to the landlord about getting out of our lease early, when my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't know. Margot. This is Maria. I know you blocked Dominic. Can we meet up tomorrow? There's more to the story you should hear. Just us. No one else. I stared at that message for a good long while. My heart pounding away. What else could possibly be going on? And why would she want to tell me face to face? After what felt like an hour, but was probably just a few minutes, I typed back. Name the place and time. Third update. Thanks to everyone for all the support on my last few posts. I've been reading your comments during nights when I couldn't sleep a wink. And they've helped me more than words can say. For those asking how I'm doing, I'm hanging in there. Some days are tougher than others. Maria and I met up. And man, it was not what I thought it'd be like at all. We met at this small breakfast joint by the park. I figured it was a safe zone, I guess. When I got there, she was already sitting, fidgeting with her phone, looking pretty antsy. She looked different than I remembered from the company party. Less done up. More like a real person somehow. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore hardly any makeup. What really threw me was how awkward she looked. If she'd been having some sneaky emotional thing going on with my fiancé, wouldn't she be acting all confident? Instead, she kept messing with her coffee mug. And wouldn't look me in the eye. The conversation revealed two huge surprises. First, Maria was totally clueless that Dominic had feelings for her until Paul just dropped it last week. Real casual. According to her, she and Dominic had worked tight on a project. Sometimes texting after hours for work. But she swore nothing was out of line from her perspective. She never flirted. Never led him on. Just kept it friendly. She even showed me their texts. Mostly work talk. Some funny pictures. Nothing flirty or weird. She even had a steady boyfriend of 3 whole years. Who even sometimes hung out with their work crew for drinks after work. The next shocker was about Paul. Turns out, he'd been stirring the pot on purpose. Maria had overheard him at work, telling Dominic to check out his other choices before tying the knot. And he even specifically brought her up, saying she understood Dominic better than me. She explained that Paul had been blabbing to everyone at work that Dominic was getting cold feet about the wedding, making jokes about him being stuck and missing out on his freedom. By the time our meeting wrapped up, I felt weirdly calm. Maria wasn't the bad guy I'd pictured. She was just caught in the middle of Paul's games and Dominic being a bit weak. Before we headed out, she said something that really stayed with me. You seem like you know who you are. Don't let anyone make you second guess that. I left that meeting with a fresh way of looking at things and a game plan. This wasn't just about Dominic and me anymore. It was about Paul's bad vibes, Dominic's family stuff, and where my place was in this whole mess. I texted Karina afterward, asking if she'd help set up a family powwow at her place. It felt like a safe spot, since I definitely wasn't ready to be one-on-one with Dominic. She said yes right away. So, that brings us to dinner last night. Karina had set everything up in her little, comfy apartment. She'd ordered food from that Italian place near her building. Nothing crazy, just pasta and salad. Valerie arrived first. Then Paul. Karina had insisted he attend. And finally Dominic, who looked like he hadn't caught a wink of sleep in forever. Those first 20 minutes were pure torture. We all just sat around Karina's dining table, poking at our pasta, trying to make awkward small talk about the weather and Karina's new coffee table. The elephant in the room was practically sitting at the table with us, but no one wanted to be the first to acknowledge it. Finally, Valerie just ripped off the band-aid, saying we weren't there for a party, but to actually deal with the mess and figure out what's next. And just like that, everything spilled out. I told them what Maria had told me, keeping an eye on Paul's face as I spoke. The way his face changed from "huh" to "I didn't do it" told me all I needed to know. He tried to cut in, saying he was just watching out for his buddy, but Karina put the kibosh on that real quick. Dominic mostly just sat there, quiet, staring at his pasta he hadn't touched. When someone finally asked him directly, he thought that Maria was just being nice, but he'd blown it up into something more because he was terrified of becoming like his old man. Valerie actually flinched when he said that. When I brought up the joke at the bar, Dominic looked truly embarrassed. He confessed it wasn't about Maria at all, he was just a chicken. Paul was giving him grief about being whipped, and instead of defending us, he said something awful to look tough. Dominic swore it never had anything to do with how I looked. Paul tried to write it off as just locker room talk, but Karina quickly pointed out that Dominic and I were supposed to get hitched in 3 months. Just hearing that simple reminder of our wedding coming up fast, hit me like a punch to the gut. Our save-the-date cards were already mailed. We'd paid money down. My dress was just hanging in Lena's spare closet, waiting to be tweaked. That's when I just said, "Real quiet. I don't think there's gonna be a wedding anymore." The whole room went dead silent. Dominic started to object, but I just talked right over him. I told them how I'd spent the past week trying to make sense of everything. What hit me was that it wasn't just Maria, or that lame joke, or even Paul messing with his head. This was about Dominic just not being straight with me. Or even with himself. I told them how I'd ignored all the warning signs for months. Him not caring about wedding plan. Him spending more and more time with Paul. Him just checking out emotionally. I made up reasons for his behavior because facing the truth was too hard. But I deserved someone who was sure about me. Someone who didn't need a whole family meeting to figure out what they wanted. Paul made some snotty comment about me being over the top, which got him a double zip it from both Valerie and Karina at the same time. Dominic kept saying he was sure he loved me, just scared he'd screw everything up. I just looked at him and said, "You already did." The talk dragged on for hours. There was crying, shouting matches especially between Karina and Paul. And some hard truths. We dug up old hurts and found some new ones. Around midnight, when everyone was just completely drained, we finally got to the point everyone knew was coming. The wedding was canceled. Our 5-year relationship was done, cooked. It wasn't a huge yelling match or someone storming out. We just both knew deep down that something major had shattered between us. Trust. Probably. Maybe we could fix it someday, but not in time for an October wedding. Not with Maria still at Dominic's job, and not with that ugly joke still stuck in my head. Karina drove me back to Lena's afterward, telling me this didn't change a thing between me and her or Valerie. She said I was still family to them, no matter what went down with Dominic. When I got back to Lena's apartment, I just sat on the pull-out couch in the dark, letting it all sink in. 5 whole years gone, the wedding's off, and no clue what's next. I didn't even cry right off the bat. Instead, I made a list in the Notes app on my phone. Cancelled the venue. Bye-bye. Money. Gave back the ring. Told all the guests. Moved out of the apartment. Changed my relationship status online. Ugh. It was past 2 in the morning when Lena kind of shuffled out of her room. She must have heard me come in and just wanted to see if I was alright. When I told her the wedding was off, she just sat down next to me on the pullout and put her arm around my shoulders. We just sat there like that until the sun came up, not saying much, just being there in my weird new normal. This morning, I woke up to a text from Dominic asking if we could meet to discuss some adulting stuff. The apartment lease. Untangling our money. What to do with the furniture we bought together. I felt really grown up. And really done. I also had a message from Elliot asking when he should come over to help pack my things. My brother, always Mr. Practical, and one from my mom, who'd somehow got wind of it. Probably from one of my cousins who keeps up with Karina's Insta, wanting to know if she should cancel her flight for the wedding. The ring feels like a dead weight on my finger now. I've been twisting it without thinking. A new nervous twitch I didn't know I had. It's a simple design. A round diamond in a white gold setting. Nothing super fancy or blingy. Dominic had picked it because it was classic, kinda like our relationship was supposed to be. Funny. Right? I called the venue this morning. The coordinator was nice enough, but stuck to the rules. The deposit is non-refundable. This close to the date. $8,000. Just gone. Poof. Money we'd saved for over a year. Skipping trips. New outfits. And eating out less. The practical side of me cringes at losing all that cash. The emotional side doesn't give a hoot about money right now. Karina texted that she'd found a photographer who might be willing to move our money to another gig later. Valerie offered to help contact family members about the cancellation to save me from all those weird talks. Little bright spots in this whole mess. Paul. No surprise there. I sent a bogus apology text about how these things happen for a reason, and how I'd find a better fit eventually. I deleted it without responding. Maria sent a short message saying she was bummed about the situation and swore again that nothing went down between them. I believe her. Strangely enough. She seems like she was just caught in the crossfire in this whole mess. An easy target for him to blame and for Paul's manipulation. The toughest part is all the everyday reminders that sting. The wedding planning binder still sitting in my tote bag. The Spotify playlist we made for the party. The honeymoon research folder on my laptop. Small bits of a life that's now just gone. Lena suggested I take a day off to clear my head from work, but I decided to go in. Sitting at home, just stewing on Reddit and overthinking everything, seemed worse than the distraction of answering phones and filing insurance claims. My coworkers have been blessedly normal. Either they don't know yet, or they're politely pretending not to notice my puffy eyes and missing sparkler. I'm meeting Dominic tomorrow at a coffee shop to swap keys and discuss the apartment. He's agreed to move out since my name is on the lease, and he can crash with his cousin temporarily. Another practical conversation in the ugly work of taking apart a life together. Part of me still can't believe this is happening. Last month, we were arguing over what songs to play at the reception and trying out cake flavors. Now, we're splitting up the toaster and stuff and deciding who keeps the PlayStation. I keep thinking about something Valerie said at the dinner. Endings are rarely clean or perfect. Most of the time, they're messy and sad and complicated. She would know. She pieced her life back together after Dominic's father left, raised Dominic and Karina by herself, and found happiness again eventually. Looking at her now, you'd never guess she went through that kind of heartbreak. Maybe there's hope in that. For now, I'm just trying to get through each day. Tomorrow, I'll deal with the apartment and the money stuff. Next week, I'll start looking for my own place. The future beyond that is fuzzy, but it's out there. Karina just texted to ask if I want to meet for coffee this weekend. She mentioned that her family friend, Kenzo, an older guy who's been close with their family for ages, offered his vacation cabin if I need a getaway to clear my head. The support from Dominic's family is unexpected but deeply appreciated. I haven't decided if I'll take Kenzo up on that offer. Part of me wants to escape somewhere quiet to sort out my head, another part knows I need my crew right now. Lena. With her down-to-earth kindness, Elliot. With his big brother vibe that keeps me safe, even Valerie and Karina. With their loyalty, even with all the family drama. What I do know is that I won't be checking my countdown app for the big day anymore. Won't be pinning reception decor ideas. Or practicing a new fancy way to sign my name with Dominic's last name. That whole future, poof. And while I don't know what comes next, I'm starting to think there's a new chapter waiting. Last update. It feels kinda weird writing this last update from my new place. It's been 3 months since that family dinner blew up my engagement. 3 months of me slowly putting my life back together in ways I never saw coming. Some of you have messaged me asking what's up. So here's the lowdown. The good. The bad. And the stuff I didn't see coming. Okay. First. The nitty-gritty. Dominic packed up and moved out of our apartment within a week after we broke up. Elliot and Lena helped me box up his stuff while he was at work, leaving it all neat and labeled in the living room for him to grab. It felt wild, splitting 5 years of our life together into his and mine, his birthday coffee maker, the cozy blanket I snagged on our weekend trip to that small mountain town, all those framed pictures we had everywhere. The apartment felt empty after that, like a movie set instead of a place where we lived. I stuck it out for 2 more weeks before the landlord finally let me out of the lease, even with an extra month's rent. It was worth every penny to get away from the ghost of our relationship hanging around every corner. Finding a new pad was tougher than I thought. Rentals are crazy right now, and my money's a lot tighter flying solo. I ended up in a smaller, 1-bedroom spot across town, further from my job but with a tiny balcony where I've started growing herbs in cheap pots. My basil keeps kicking the bucket, but the mint is doing great. Call me crazy, but I think that means something. Money-wise. It's been a real shift. All our shared bills suddenly landed on my plate, car insurance, Netflix. Even groceries feel pricier when you're just cooking for yourself. Now I'm that person who clips coupons, buys generic brands, tracks every penny in a spreadsheet, and thinks twice before ordering delivery. Adulting stuff I never thought I'd learn at 29. The wedding folks were surprisingly cool about it. The venue kept our deposit, but they sent a sweet note hoping I'd find happiness. The florist gave us half our money back, even though their policy said no refunds. The DJ even told me his brother works at a therapy center. A random but kinda thoughtful move. My engagement ring is still in its little box, tucked away in my dresser. Dominic said I could keep it or sell it, that it was bad juju for him to take it back. I still haven't figured out what to do with it. Some days, I completely forget it's there. Other days, I open the box and just stare at it, wondering how something so tiny held such big promises. Social media was a whole new level of awful. I put off changing my relationship status for 2 weeks, just dreading all the questions that would flood in. When I finally did it at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, the messages still came pouring in. Sweet friends asking what happened, faraway relatives sending good thoughts, old classmates I hadn't talked to in years, suddenly popping up in my DMs, with fake worry that felt a whole lot like nosiness. I posted a short, vague message about mutual decisions and asking for privacy. Then I turned off notifications and tossed my phone onto the couch. Later, I put up just one picture of my new apartment keys with the words, "Fresh start." It didn't get as many likes as my engagement announcement, but it felt more real somehow. Okay. So, about Dominic. We've talked a few times since we split, mostly about boring stuff. Mail. Going to the old place. That shared online storage we forgot to disconnect. Giving his sister back her air fryer we borrowed. Every chat has been polite but awkward, like strangers stuck making small talk in an elevator. He's still at the same job. Still buddies with Paul, though Karina tells me they've had some beef lately. And still crashing at his cousin's. Word on the street, courtesy of Karina, is that things got weird with Maria after we broke up. She asked to move to a different team and has been giving him the cold shoulder since she got the whole lowdown. The biggest shocker happened last month when Dominic texted, asking if we could meet up. We hadn't seen each other in person since we swapped keys at the apartment, and I was kinda curious what he wanted. We met at a coffee shop close to my new spot, a neutral zone with plenty of people around, like Lena half-jokingly said. It looked different, skinnier, with dark bags under his eyes, wearing a shirt I didn't recognize. The first 10 minutes were just awkward, small talk about his job and the weather. Then he pulled out a notebook. "I've been seeing someone," he said. And my heart did a weird little jump before he quickly added, "A therapist." I mean, the notebook was for his therapy. Daily notes on habits and ways of acting he wanted to fix. He'd been digging into his relationship with his dad, his friendship with Paul, and how he treated me. He didn't ask me to forgive him or get back together, he just wanted me to know he was working on himself. I should have done this years ago, he admitted. Maybe things would have gone down differently. He was more aware of himself than I'd ever seen him. And I honestly found myself hoping therapy would actually help him, not for me, that train left the station, but because lugging around that much family baggage seemed totally draining. Before we took off, he said he heard I was still tight with his mom and sister. "I'm glad," he said. "They need good folks around." That's been one of the weirdest parts of this split, staying connected with Dominic's family while cutting ties with him. Valerie texts me every week, usually sending me funny memes or updates on her garden. Karina and I grab breakfast every other Sunday at this little diner that's halfway between our places. They've been careful not to make things awkward or spill too much about Dominic, respecting the lines I drew. As for me, personally, I'd love to say I've had some big realization, that I've totally figured myself out through all this heartbreak. But the truth is, it's a lot messier than that. Some days, I feel completely free, relieved I didn't marry someone who could hurt me without a second thought. Other days, usually when my hot water heater acts funny or I can't reach something on the top shelf that Dominic would have grabbed for me, I miss the simple comforts of having a partner around. I've started therapy too, not just because of the breakup, but because it made me see how much I'd bent over backwards for him in that relationship. How many warning signs I blew off because they came wrapped in the comfort of familiarity. How much of myself I'd put on the back burner for Dominic's drama and worries. My therapist suggested I get back some of the old me that disappeared along the way. I've started hiking again on Saturday mornings, something I'd stopped doing because Dominic always griped about getting up early on weekends. Dating again? That feels miles away. Though my coworkers are already hinting about setting me up with some awesome dude, they know I'm not ready. Maybe in a few more months. Maybe longer. Right now, I'm still learning how to be okay just being by myself. The biggest surprise came from what should have been the toughest thing to do: calling off our honeymoon trip. We booked a 10-day trip to the coast, renting a cozy little cottage with a deck overlooking the water. Couldn't get our money back, naturally. For weeks, I ignored the reminder in my calendar. Couldn't stand the thought of losing that money too. Then Lena suggested something wild. Take the trip anyway. All by myself. You've never traveled alone, she pointed out. Maybe it's time. The idea terrified me at first. 10 days alone in a cozy cottage built for two sweethearts? It sounded like the start of some tearjerker movie. But the more I thought about it, the better it sounded. I could wake up when I wanted, explore without having to bend for anyone else, read a whole book in one sitting if I felt like it. So, that's where I'm headed next week, to a cottage that was supposed to be our honeymoon spot. But now it's just for me. I've packed 3 paperbacks, downloaded some podcasts, and treated myself to a new bathing suit that I picked just for comfort, not caring what anyone else thought. My mom thinks I've lost my marbles. Elliot offered to come with me for part of the time, but I said no. Karina suggested I download a dating app, just to check out the scene maybe. But probably not. I don't know what I'll find on this solo honeymoon trip. Maybe a clearer head, maybe more questions, probably get a sunburn, knowing my luck with putting on lotion. The other day, I was grocery shopping when the song that was ours came on over the store speakers. 3 months ago, it would have made me dart into the frozen food aisle, trying to hold back the tears. This time, I just felt a little pinch. Like a bruise that's almost gone. Progress. Not perfection. I'm not gonna pretend I've got everything figured out. My new apartment's shower has weird, hot and cold spells. Another one of my basil plants bit the dust yesterday. I still sometimes reach for my phone to text Dominic something silly. Then remember, we're not like that anymore. Lesson. What I've learned is that you deserve someone who chooses you every day, not someone who makes you feel second best or is unsure about being with you. I spent so much time trying to prove myself, hoping for the validation that never came. But now, I'm finding strength in choosing myself, taking back my own life, and discovering what makes me happy again. I want to hear from you. Have you ever stayed in a relationship longer than you should have, trying to make it work? How did you find the courage to move on? And what did you learn about yourself in the process?